Why it's so important for you to be working with truly gifted healers. I'm Ben Ufana, completing another article here. A lot of depth, detail, far more than I could remember. So I will be reading from the article itself. Let's dive in. Much of what I'm going to share with you here in this video goes beyond the range of what most people in our modern day world are familiar with. A true skeptic, which I consider myself to be, is someone willing to give themselves the opportunity to experience something firsthand before deciding whether there is any validity or substance to it. I ask that you keep an open mind. For those struggling with trauma, attachment wounds, and other deep emotional injuries, this is especially important because I'm going to be speaking about one of the most powerful means of healing available here on planet Earth. All around the world, there have been powerful traditions of healing. Among the native peoples of the Americas, in the Philippines, and in places like Malaysia and Indonesia are some of the most gifted healers. Brazil also has not only indigenous healers, but a strong tradition of non-indigenous healers, particularly in the state of Bahia. Sadly, many of these ancient traditions have been dying out. Among Native American tribes, the traditional doctors desperately wanted to pass on the gifts of healing, commonly referred to as medicine, to younger apprentices. Since the time the tribes were forced onto reservations, this has been an ongoing struggle. Very few were willing to accept the responsibility of carrying these powers. They weren't willing to go through the extraordinarily arduous process required to become a traditional doctor. Many were afraid of the powers themselves. The same loss is happening in other ancient traditions as well. For decades now, people have been increasingly drawn to the conveniences and bright, shiny distractions of modern life, and yet so many people are disconnected, fragmented, carrying trauma and other deep emotional wounds. Modern allopathic medicine simply does not address much of this. Commonly available holistic modalities can help to some extent, but often do not reach the source of the wounding. In my 20s, as the traumas of my own childhood and adolescence were being reenacted, through my attempts to form intimate relationships, I had the opportunity to work with a few truly gifted healers. One was known as Brother Max, a psychic surgeon from the Philippines. Another was Mauricio Panicet from Brazil, sometimes referred to as the Man of Light. During sessions with him, there were literal flashes of light going off in the room as he worked. In 2007, while in Sri Lanka, I did 14 sessions in April and another 12 in August with Gyana Simanathero, a Buddhist monk who possessed a powerful gift of healing. The emotional wounding I carried ran extraordinarily deep. Of all the therapeutic interventions I've tried, these individual sessions with gifted healers were among the most powerful I've ever experienced. The only intervention I encountered that exceeds them in depth and intensity and in terms of actually healing and transforming the trauma and other deep emotional wounding, the attachment issues, all these things I carried. The only thing greater that exceeded the work I did with those gifted healers was going through the Vision Quest, the traditional Native American practice that involves fasting alone in the mountains for 4 days and nights without food and water. During these sessions I did with these gifted healers, I could feel the scarring left by the traumas I experienced, the reenactment being addressed directly. I could feel myself digesting the deeply wounding lived experiences along with the backlog of highly charged emotions tied to them. Each time there was an incremental easing of the suffering that I was experiencing. The problem wasn't the effectiveness of the work itself. The problem was how deep the wounding ran and how infrequently I had access to these healers. This is one of the reasons I've gone through so many vision quests. I've been returning to the Wichita Mountains in the spring and fall since 1993. When I see and feel the scarring caused by trauma in other people, I wish they too knew about and had access to this level of healing. Even when people do have the opportunity, many are resistant. Much of the resistance has to do with the fact that we've grown up in a culture, even our families of origin as well, all this is being reinforced where we learn to avoid, resist, to distract ourselves. We don't want to go there. We don't want to face the issues that are upsetting or difficult, that we find challenging, are the emotions that arise in response. By the way, I'm recording this in New York City, and the sirens are incessant, and so I don't know if that's coming through on the background, but you may hear some sirens as I'm recording. Anyway, this form of work goes directly to the source of the wounding. It brings trauma and the emotions held in the body to the surface. And when that happens, the emotions that surface, the impressions of our lived experience, all that needs to be worked with, thoroughly digested, transformed, and integrated so that it becomes fuel for growth. This is, again, where resistance often shows up in people. We need to teach ourselves, to condition ourselves, to repattern ourselves, in a sense, to just go there, face it, deal with it, head on. It's the only way healing can truly take place. Now, I'm probably going to offend some people with this next section, but this needs to be said. The field has become muddied, or more accurately, polluted, and clarity is desperately needed. Sacred traditions have been profoundly bastardized. These days, people are going through weekend workshops, taking levels 1, 2, and 3 certifications, and then calling themselves Reiki Master Healers. Others attend a few workshops and are calling themselves shamans. These insta-shamans have never spent any meaningful time around indigenous peoples or their traditional doctors, nor do they have access to the medicine, the healing gifts that have been carried for thousands of years. And when it comes to these weekend workshop master healers, I often ask people this: if you were seriously injured in an automobile accident, you're laying there in bed, you're in a great deal of pain, and you find out the physician treating you had 3 weekends of training, how would you feel about it? Seriously. Why would you entrust your body, your psyche, the trauma you're carrying to someone whose training is so profoundly inadequate? I've worked with many people who've experienced emotional, physical, sexual trauma. I've seen countless cases where individuals have gone through repeated Reiki, soul retrieval, or whatever supposed healing sessions, yet the traumas and highly charged emotions, all that stagnation that's accumulated in their bodies, it's still very much there. It hasn't gone anywhere. The subtle bodies consisting of the chakras and layers of the aura were in many instances still very much damaged, disfigured. The functions of the brain's biochemistry, the endocrine and other systems were still very much compromised. I could see little, if any, significant progress. Most people in our modern day world simply don't know the difference. Having never been exposed to legitimate traditions or lineage-based healers, they have no real point of reference for what it's like to work with someone who possesses genuine healing power. As a result, many who are truly in need of healing and transformation continue to suffer needlessly. They're not getting the healing they need. I probably wouldn't have known the difference myself had I not been drawn to Native Americans from early childhood, lived among the Kiowa Navajo people for years, and trained extensively with a traditional Kiowa doctor, and Chinese master in Xing Yi Quan, Baguazhang, Tai Chi, and Qigong, internal arts that are rooted in Taoism. I've also spent significant amounts of time in India and Sri Lanka, where individuals over thousands of years have developed equally extraordinary capabilities. Having experienced a great deal of trauma growing up and patterns of reenactment in my relationships, I'm very thankful for these opportunities. If I had only known life in our modern day world and had sought out the Insta shamans, our weekend workshop master healers, much of that trauma, as I see in so many other people, never would have healed. Just to reiterate, I would not have healed the attachment wounds and other trauma I carried, nor experienced the healing and transformation that over the years made it possible for me to form healthier inner models of attachment and attract partners with whom I truly resonate, capable of reciprocal love. Had I not worked with truly gifted healers such as Brother Max, Mauricio Panacea, and Gyana Samanathero, nor would it have happened without my going on dozens of vision quests, fasting alone in the mountains for the 4 days and nights without food and water. My intention is not to put down or discourage anyone. The problem is that there's a great deal of ignorance in our modern day world because these ancient healing traditions have not been a part of our culture. Among Native Americans, there is much greater seriousness and reverence around these practices. They were viewed as sacred. Traditional healers were the doctors people turned to when they had serious medical needs. And in many instances, it was a matter of life or death. The training required to receive these gifts and develop as a doctor was incredibly arduous. Among many of the Plains tribes, a person would not even be taken seriously if they had not gone through the vision quest fasting the 4 days and nights alone in the mountains without food and water. Many of these doctors went multiple times through the vision quest, with their healing power growing stronger over the years. We need a lot more healers in this world, and I feel many do possess the aptitude. I simply want to encourage those who are committed to doing whatever it takes to develop these capacities. I suggest that you seek out the truly gifted healers from these indigenous and other ancient traditions. That may involve travel, living abroad for extended periods of time, and going through a one-on-one apprenticeship, which in many instances requires years of intensive training. At 14, when I first heard about the traditional Native American doctors, I knew immediately that this is what I would do with my life if given the opportunity. At 17, I made it as far as southwestern Oklahoma, where I ended up living among a community of Kiowa Indians. I spent many nights sitting up in peyote meetings with the Kiowa elders. It was in one of those meetings that I met my mentor, Horace Dulkai, one of the last surviving traditional doctors. Horace passed on to me portions of his own healing gifts. He then had me go on the vision quest to earn the right to work with them. While I possess extraordinarily powerful gifts of healing, there are limits to how many people I can work with. What I truly want is for as many people as possible to work with legitimate, gifted healers, not just myself, but others who come from real lineages who genuinely carry healing power, because people deserve to access what actually works. When I made my way to Oklahoma at 17, I spent inordinate amounts of time with some of the Kiowa elders, mainly with one named Jack. I spent many nights sitting with him at the kitchen table as he shared accounts of his people that had been passed down over hundreds of years. I was especially fascinated when he spoke about the traditional doctors and others who possessed various forms of power referred to as medicine. Native Americans lived with the foot in two worlds. On one hand, they were very much grounded in their bodies and in life in this physical world. On the other, some possessed an understanding of and the capacity to work directly with the forces of nature. Native elders from different tribes sometimes spoke of how certain traditional doctors, when someone was wounded, could extract or bullet or arrow and then seal the open wound. There were also those individuals who possessed power that enabled them to bring the rain or even change the course of a tornado. Some of these individuals were said to possess what we would now call paranormal abilities. I first encountered these accounts in the historical books I devoured as a teen, which I checked out from the Stephen F. Austin State University Library, located in Nacogdoches, Texas, where I spent much of my adolescence. Many of these accounts were shared by the Native people themselves and later recorded by Christian missionaries, Bureau of Indian Affairs agents, anthropologists, and others who lived among or spent extended time with these tribes. I later heard many of these same or similar accounts directly from the Native elders I spent time with. Indigenous healers work as conduits, allowing other forces or beings to work through them to facilitate healing that would not otherwise be possible. Trained by a traditional Native American doctor and having gone through so many vision quests over the years, like Indigenous healers, I too work as a conduit. I allow an extraordinarily powerful presence to work through me to facilitate healing within the bodies and minds of those I work with. For many years now, I have assisted individuals with a wide range of health-related issues, including heart disease and stroke, digestive disorders such as ulcerative colitis and irritable bowel syndrome, asthma and other respiratory disorders, neurological conditions such as multiple sclerosis and ALS, injuries resulting from automobile accidents, including traumatic brain injuries, and a wide range of other health challenges. In addition, I have worked for many years with people suffering from trauma resulting from emotional, physical, and sexual abuse and assault, and combat and other wartime experiences. I've also worked with many individuals in the midst of painful breakups, divorce, or being ghosted, as well as those struggling with attachment wounds, patterns of abandonment, and unrequited love. People I work with who are dealing with physical health issues often describe feeling the presence I speak of working through me, facilitating a regenerative process, repairing internal organs and tissues, and restoring organs and systems so they could function properly. Those who have suffered trauma in other deep emotional wounding, breakups, or other forms of heart-rending devastation often describe feeling this presence working within them, facilitating a process in which trauma and other lived experiences and the emotions tied to them are being digested. They come out the other side lighter, more resilient, their bodies, minds, and lives are transformed. Like the traditional doctors, after their people were forced onto the reservations and began to assimilate into the dominant culture, I, like other Indigenous healers, want to see these healing practices continue. The level of disconnection, fragmentation, and unresolved wounding in our world is staggering. I want to see people around the world benefiting from these healing gifts, whether they have the opportunity to work with me, with Indigenous healers from other traditions, or with other legitimate, lineage-based, truly gifted healers. I encourage you to seek out those of us who possess these gifts, because we can facilitate healing within bodies and minds that would not otherwise be possible.